Section 4 of the Endeavour Journal of Sir Joseph Banks. Journal from 25 August 1768 to 12 July 1771 by Joseph Banks. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Gail Timmerman Vaughan. Section 4. November 1768. 1768, November 1. A shoal of small fish were today under our stern, who attended the ship for some time. She had, however, too much way through the water for our instruments, so we could not take any of them. 1768, November 2. This day was quite void of events. The wind, however, was very fair, and we now approached the place where we were next to refresh ourselves apace. 1768, November 3. This morn the sun was immediately over our heads, notwithstanding which the thermometer was no higher than 77. Since we left the calms under the line, the weather has grown cooler by gradual degrees. Now we reckon it quite moderate, after having felt the heat of 83 so lately. This even I, for the first time, for other people had seen them much before, observed two light spots in the heavens, appearing much like the Milky Way. One, the largest and brightest, bore south by east, the other about south. 1768, November 4. Still, as we got more to the westward, the wind became more favourable. Today it was almost aft, and has been all along creeping to the northward. 1768, November 5. The thermometer kept still gradually falling as the wind got more to the northward, which appears odd, as the north wind should now be the warm wind. We were not yet, however, enough to the southward to find much alteration. Wind this morn was northeast, at noon north by west. Between this place and mid-channel it has changed from south by east. The trade being to the northward upon this coast has been observed long ago, though I question whether our navigators are sufficiently apprised of it. Piso, in his Natural History of the Brazils, says that the winds along shore are constantly to the northward from October to March, and to the southward from March to October. Dampier, also, who certainly had as much experience as most men, says the same thing, advising ships outward bound to keep to the westward, where they are most certain to find the trade more eastward than in mid-channel, where it sometimes is due south, or within 1/2 a point of it, as we ourselves experienced. 1768, November 6. Today light winds and very pleasant weather. The thermometer was never above 76. Towards evening the colour of the water was observed to change, upon which we sounded, and found ground at 32 fathom. The lead was cast 3 times between 6 and 10, without finding a foot difference in the depth or quality of the bottom, which was encrusted with coral. We supposed this to be the tail of a great shoal, laid down in all our charts by the name of Albrojos, on which Lord Anson struck soundings in his outward-bound passage. 1768, November 7. This morn at 4, no ground, with 100 fathoms of line. About noon, long ranges of a yellowish colour appeared upon the sea, many of them very large. One, the largest, might be a mile in length and 300 or 400 yards wide. The seamen in general affirmed roundly that they were the spawn of fishes, and that they had often seen the same appearance before. Upon taking up some of the water so coloured, we found it to be caused by innumerable small atoms, each pointed at the end and of a yellowish colour, none of them above 1/4 of a line in length. In the microscope they appeared to be fasciculi of small fibres interwove one within another, not unlike the niddy of some Pharagnias, which we call cadices. What they were, or for what purposes designed, we could not even guess, nor so much as distinguish whether their substance was animal or vegetable. 1768, November 8. Continent of South America. At daybreak today we made the land, which proved to be the continent of South America, in latitude 21.16. About 10 we saw a fishing boat, who told us that the country we saw belonged to the captainship of Espiritu Santo. Dr. Solander and myself went on board this boat, in which were 11 men, 9 of whom were blacks, who all fished with lines. We bought of them the chief part of their cargo, consisting of dolphins, 2 kinds of pelagic scombers, sea bream, and the fish called in the West Indies Welshman, for which they made us pay 19 shillings and 6d. We had taken Spanish silver with us, which we imagined was the currency of the continent. We were therefore not a little surprised that they asked us for English shillings, and preferred 2, which we by accident had to the pistarines, though they after some words took them also. The business of these people seemed to be going a good distance from land and catching large fish, which they salted in bulk in a place in the middle of their boat, made for that purpose. In this place was about 2 quintals of fish laid in salt, which they offered to sale for 16 shillings, and would doubtless have taken half the money had we been inclined to buy them. But fresh provisions was all we wanted, and the fresh fish they had, which we bought, served the whole ship's company. Their provision for the sea consisted of a cask of water and a bag of the flour of cassada, which they called farinha de pau, or wooden flour, a very proper name for it, which indeed tastes more like powdered chips than anything else. Their method of drinking out of their cask of water was truly primitive, and pleased me much. The cask was large, as broad as the boat, and exactly fitted a place in the ballast made for it. They consequently could not get at the bottom of it to put in a tap by which the water might be drawn out. To remedy this difficulty, they made use of a cane, about 3 feet long, hollow, and open at each end. This the man who wanted to drink desired his neighbour to fill for him, which he did by putting it into the cask, and laying the palm of his hand over the uppermost hole, hindered the water from running out of the other, to which the drinker applied his mouth, and the other, taking off his hand, let the liquor run into the drinker's mouth till he was satisfied. Soon after we came on board, a sphinx was taken, which proved to be quite a new one, and a small bird also, who was the Tanagra jacarini of Lynn. It seemed, however, from Linnaeus's description, as well as Edwards and Bresson's, that neither of them had seen the bird, which was in reality a Loxia nitens. The fish brought on board proved to be Scomber anxia and falcatus, Coryphena hipparis, Sparus pagris, and Cyanea rubens. The second and last not being before described, we called them by these names. After noon the wind came about south and south by east, and it soon came on to blow fresh, which we were not at all accustomed to, so we boarded it along shore without gaining much. 1768 November 9. This morn wind continued south and south by west, but is more moderate, but still more sea than we should choose were we directors of the winds and waves. We, however, stood in with the land till we found ourselves in a large bay, the shores of which were very flat. In the middle of this bay were some large hills, which lay far inland, and made the prospect very remarkable, as expressed in the view. At this time we were by guess within 5 miles of the shore, and our water had decreased gradually till we had less than 5 fathom. It was about 4 in the evening, so our captain thought proper to put about and stand off to sea. In the evening the wind freshened a little, but was not near so troublesome as last night. 1768 November 10. Wind more moderate this morn. We stood in with the land and made it nearly in the same place as we left it last night, our soundings being from 15 to 10 fathoms. After dinner the wind came more to the eastward and freshened, and little pieces of seaweed now came floating by the ship, which we took, and it proved to be Sargasso fucus natans, which is generally supposed to increase upon the surface of the sea, in the same manner as duckweed, lemna, does on fresh water, without having any root. This, however, plainly showed that it had been rooted in the coral rock on the bottom, as 2 specimens particularly had large lumps of the coral still adhering to their bottoms. Among the weed we got were some animals, but scarcely worth mentioning. One ballistes, but quite a fry, so young that it was impossible to refer it to its species. A worm also was in it, which proved to be Nereus pelagica. In the course of this night we ran over a small bank, on which the water suddenly shoaled to 7 fathom, and kept thereabouts for some time. It, however, deepened gradually. 1768 November 11. Light breezes today, the wind much more fair than it has been, so that we began to get to the southward. The thermometer today was no more than 72, so that we felt cold or cool at least, though we could not prevail on ourselves to shut the cabin windows, as we are soon to come into much warmer weather. Just before dark the land was seen ahead, which we supposed to be the island off Cape Frio, so we hoped to be the length of Cape Frio by tomorrow morn. 1768 November 12. This morn we were abreast of the land, which proved, as we thought last night, to be the island just without Cape Frio, which is called in some maps the Isle of Frio. The wind was fair, and we passed it with a pleasant breeze, hoping tomorrow to get into the harbour. About noon we saw the hill called Sugarloaf, which is just by the harbour's mouth, but it was a long way off yet, so there were no hopes of reaching it this night. The shore from Cape Frio to this place has been one uninterrupted beach of the whitest colour I ever saw, which they tell me is a white sand. This evening wind still continued fair, but very little. We now saw the Sugarloaf very plain, but could not tonight reach it, so shortened sail. We had seen for some time a small vessel under the land, which seemed to steer into the harbour as well as we. The land all along this coast has been exceedingly high inland, except in the bay mentioned on the 7th. The mountains seen now about Rio Janeiro were immensely high, so that some of our people compared them with the Pike of Teneriffe, though I do not myself think they deserve a comparison, so much higher is the Pike. Notwithstanding, the hills are high, and begin to rise near the shore. The beach is sandy, and appears to be of a very firm sand. In the course of this evening we approached very near the land, and found it very cold, to our feelings at least. The thermometer at 10 o'clock stood at 68 1/4, which gave us hopes that the country would be cooler than we should expect from the accounts of travellers, especially Mr. Byron, who says that no business is done here from 10 till 2, on account of the immense heat. 1768, November 13. This morn the harbour of Rio Janeiro was right ahead, about 2 leagues off, but it being quite calm, we made our approaches very slowly. The sea was inconceivably full of small vermes, which we took without the least difficulty. They were almost all new except Beroe labiata, Medusa radiata, Fimbriata, and Crystallina, Dagassa blank. Soon after that a fishing boat came aboard and sold us 3 scombers, which proved to be new, and were called a salmonius. His baits were Culpia chinensis, of which we also procured specimens. As soon as we came well into the river, the captain sent Mr. Hicks, his first lieutenant, with a midshipman to get a pilot, and stood up the river, expecting him down very soon. He did not, nor did the boat, till we were on the point of dropping an anchor just under the town. The boat then came without either of our officers, in exchange for whom came a subaltern Portuguese, who seemed to have no kind of business with us. The coxswain brought word from the lieutenant that he was detained on shore till the captain should go off. Soon after we came to an anchor, a 10-oared boat came alongside the ship with 12 or 14 soldiers in it, who rowed round us without taking any notice of us or saying a word. A quarter of an hour after came a boat in which was a disembargador and a colonel of a Portuguese regiment, who asked us many questions which at first seemed to discourage our stay, as telling us that the governor would furnish us with any quantity of water in 2 days. In the conclusion, however, he was immensely civil, telling us that the governor would give us every assistance in his power, that the lieutenant had not been confined, but on account of the practica had not been allowed to go on shore. He should now, however, be sent on board immediately, that the captain was welcome to go on shore now, but he wished the rest of the crew might remain on board till the paper they drew up had been delivered. 1768, November 14. This morn Captain Cook went ashore, Dr. Solander and myself impatiently waiting for his return, which he promised should be the moment he had spoken with the Viceroy, who would no doubt tell him that the practica paper had been delivered, and we were all at liberty to come ashore when we pleased. About 12 he came on board with a Portuguese officer in his boat, who had been put there by order of the Viceroy, out of a compliment, as he termed it, and an English gentleman, Mr. Forster, by name a lieutenant in the Portuguese service. The captain told us that we could not be allowed to have a house or sleep ashore, so the Viceroy had told him, but Mr. Forster told us that he had given orders that no person but the captain and such common sailors as were required to be upon duty should be permitted to go ashore, and that we the passengers were probably particularly objected to. We, however, in the evening dressed ourselves and attempted to go ashore under the pretence of a visit to the Viceroy, but were stopped by the guard boat, whose officers told us that he had particular orders, which he could not transgress, to let no officer or passenger except the captain pass the boat. After much conversation to no purpose, we were obliged to return on board, and the captain went ashore to remonstrate to the Viceroy about it, but could get no answer but that it was the King of Portugal's orders, and consequently must be. 1768, November 15. This morn the captain went again ashore, and told the Viceroy that it was necessary to give the ship a heel, in which case it would be almost impossible for the gentlemen who were passengers to stay on board her. The Viceroy, as I suppose, misunderstood him, and supposing that he wanted to have the ship hove down, said that if the ship was reported by one of his carpenters, who should be sent on board, to want such repairs, he would give her all necessaries for so doing. In that case the gentleman should have a house ashore, but gave him to understand that a sentinel would be put at the door, with orders not to let us stir out, or any one come in, on any pretence whatsoever. 1768, November 16. The captain went ashore again, and remonstrated particularly against the sentinel that was put in his boat whenever he landed or came aboard, which he was told was a compliment, but now found to be a guard. He received no satisfactory answers, or rather none at all, but that it is the King of Portugal's orders. 1768, November 17. Tired with waiting and remonstrating only in words, both the captain and myself sent ashore written memorials, of which mine is subjoined, as well as another with the answers, which complain of His Excellency the Viceroy's behaviour to us, as a king's ship, as almost a breach of treaty. 1768, November 18. Answers to our memorials came on board, in which the captain is told that he has no reason to complain, as such usage as he has received has been constantly the custom of the ports of Brazil, and that the Viceroy himself served an English ship, just in the same manner, at Bahia. As for me, I am told that as I have not brought proper credentials from the court of Lisbon, it is impossible that I can be permitted to land. 1768, November 19. Both the captain and myself sent answers to His Excellency's memorials this morn by the lieutenant, who had orders not to suffer a guard to be put into his boat, but if the guard boat insisted upon it, to return on board. The boat let him pass, but the Viceroy, as soon as he heard that he had come ashore without a guard, ordered sentinels to be put into the boat, and on the lieutenant refusing to go on board unless the sentinels were taken out, ordered the boat's crew to be taken into custody, the boat detained, and the lieutenant to be sent on board in a guard boat, under care of an officer. When he came on board, he reported what he had seen, that the men in our pinnace made not the least resistance, notwithstanding which the soldiers who took them into custody behaved with a great indecency, striking them many times and thrusting them out of the boat. The same guard boat also brought back the letters unopened. This evening it blew very hard at about south, puffs coming off about 3 minutes distant from each other, which seldom lasted above half a minute, but in that time were as violent as I ever saw. At this time our longboat came on board with 4 casks of rum in her. She with difficulty fetched the ship, and soon after by some mismanagement, which I cannot account for, broke adrift, carrying with her my small boat, which was made fast to her. We had now no boat on board, but a small 4-oared yawl, which was immediately sent after her and took her in tow. But notwithstanding all that could be done by the people who rowed in the longboat, and those who towed in the yawl, she was very soon out of sight, and we were under the greatest uneasiness, well knowing that she drove directly upon the reef of rocks which runs out from the point of Ilhoa das Ferreiras, just to the leeward of where we lay. After remaining in this situation until 2 in the morning, our people came on board, and told us that the longboat was sunk, but that they had left her riding to her grappling, though full of water. As for my boat, they had in returning to the ship fallen in with a reef of rocks, in which dangerous situation they had been obliged to cut her adrift. This was poor comfort, though we were glad to find the people safe. Yet the loss of our longboat, which we much feared, was perhaps the greatest misfortune that could happen to people who were going, as we were, upon discovery. I should have mentioned that on the detainder of our boat's crew a petty officer was sent ashore with the memorials, and a letter from the captain demanding the boat and men, who were suffered quietly to go ashore on taking a soldier out of the guard boat. The only answer he got was verbal, that the affair could not be settled as yet. 1768, November 20. This morn the yawl, now the only boat we had, was sent ashore to ask assistance. They returned about 9 and brought with her our boat and crew that had been detained, as well as another of the Viceroy's, which had orders to assist us in searching for our boats. The people who came in the pinnace declared that they never made the least resistance, but said that the soldiers struck them often, that they were confined in a loathsome dungeon, where their companions were chiefly blacks, who were chained, but the coxswain purchased a better apartment for 7 pitaks, about as many shilling English. Our situation this whole day was better imagined than described. The shore boat came on board at noon, that the people might have their victuals, but brought no news of the longboat. Tired with expectation, I confess I had almost given over all hopes of ever seeing her again. But just at dark night the pinnace came, bringing with her both the boats and all their contents. We now immediately passed from our disagreeable thoughts to a situation as truly happy, and concluded with defying the Viceroy and all that he could do to us. 1768 November 21. Letters came from the Viceroy to both the captain and myself, in which he told me very politely that it is not in his power to permit to go ashore. In the captain's he raised some doubts of our ship being a king's ship, so I, who could ground my pretensions to going ashore to no other foundation, thought it best to drop them, hoping that by and by, when things were more quiet, I might have an opportunity of smuggling myself ashore. 1768 November 22. This morn I sent my servants ashore at daybreak, who stayed till dark night, and brought off many plants and insects. 1768 November 23. The Viceroy's answer to the captain's last memorial came on board, in which the captain is accused of smuggling, which made us all angry, but our venting our spleen against the Viceroy will be of very little service to us. 1768 November 24. My servants went ashore again, and brought off many plants, etc. 1768 November 25. This morn Dr. Solander went into the town as surgeon of the ship, to visit a friar who had desired that the surgeon might be sent to him. He received civilities from the people, rather more than he could expect. 1768 November 26. I myself went ashore this morn before daybreak, and stayed till dark night. While I was ashore, I met several of the inhabitants, who were very civil to me, taking me to their houses, where I bought of them stock for the ship, tolerably cheap, a porker middling fat for 11 shil, a muscovy duck, something under 2 shils, etc. The country where I saw it abounded with vast variety of plants and animals, mostly such as have not been described by our naturalists, as so few have had the opportunity of coming here. Indeed, no one that I know of, even tolerably curious, has been here since Margrave and Piso, about the year 1640, so it is easy to guess the state in which the natural history of such a country must be. To give a catalogue of what I found would be a trouble very little to the purpose, as every particular is mentioned in the general catalogues of this place. I cannot, however, help mentioning some which struck me the most, and consequently gave me particular pleasure. These were chiefly the parasitic plants, especially Renialmias, for I was not fortunate enough to see one epidendron, and the different species of bromelia, many not before described, had I been fortunate enough to see fructifications, which I did of very few. B. caritas I saw here, growing on the decayed trunk of a tree 50 feet high at least, which it had so entirely covered that the whole seemed to be a tree of caritas. The growth of the also pleased me much, though I had before got a very good idea of it from Rumphius, who has a very good figure of the tree in his herb Amboin tab. Add to these the whole country covered with the beautiful blossom of Malpighias, Banisterias, Passifloras, not to forget Poinciana and Mimosa sensitiva, and a beautiful species of Cluthia, of which I saw great plenty. In short, the wildest spots here were varied with a greater quantity of flowers, as well as more beautiful ones than our best devised gardens, a sight infinitely pleasing to the eye for a short time, though no doubt it would soon tire with the continuance of it. The birds of many species, especially the smaller ones, sat in great abundance on the boughs, many of them covered with the most elegant plumage. I shot Loxia brasiliensis, and saw several specimens of them. Insects, also, were here in great abundance, many species very fine, but much more nimble than our Europeans, especially the butterflies, which almost all flew near the tops of the trees, and were very difficult to come at, except when the sea breeze blew fresh, which kept them low down among the trees, where they might be taken. Hummingbirds I also saw of one species, but could not shoot them. The banks of the sea, and more remarkably all the edges of small brooks, were covered with innumerable quantities of small crabs, Cancer vocans Linn, one hand of which is very large. Among these were many, both whose hands were remarkably small and of equal size. These my black servant told me were females of the others, and indeed all I examined, which were many, proved to be females, though whether really of the same species with vocans, I cannot determine on so short an acquaintance. I saw but little cultivation, and that seemed to be taken with little pains with. Grassland was the chief, on which were many lean cattle feeding, and lean they might well be, for almost all the species of grass which I observed here were creepers, and consequently so close to the ground, that though there might be upon them a sufficient bite for horses or sheep, yet how horned cattle could live at all was all that appeared extraordinary to me. I also saw their gardens or small patches, in which they cultivate many sorts of European garden stuff, as cabbage, peas, beans, kidney beans, turnips, white radishes, pumpkins, etc., but all much inferior to ours, except perhaps the last. Here also they grew watermelons and pineapples, the only fruits which I have seen them cultivate. The watermelons are very good, but the pines much inferior to those I have tasted in Europe. Hardly one I have yet had could have been reckoned among the middling sort. Many were worse than I have seen sent from table in England, where nobody would eat them. Though in general they are very sweet, they have not the least flavour, but more of their fruits by and by. In these gardens also grow yams and manioca or cassata, which supplies the place of bread here, for as our European bread corn will not grow here at all, the flour they have is brought from Portugal at a large expense, too great for even the middling people to purchase, much more the inferior ones. 1768, November 27. This morn, when the boats returned from watering, they brought word that they heard it said in the town that people were sent out in search of some of our people who were ashore without leave. This we concluded meant either Dr. Solander or myself, which made it necessary for us to go no more ashore while we stayed. 1768, November 28 to 30. These 3 days nothing material happened. Everything went on as usual, only we if possible increased our haste to be gone from this place. End of section 4, 1768, November.